Happy New Year, everyone. We are here at
Hey, Happy New Year.
2025. Yay. So welcome back to the
Whoopee!
podcast. 2025. We have got a full panel, an excited panel as you see here today. Want to welcome everyone in. We've got Margaret Rue, 50 years with the work. Ken Pearson, 30 years. Karen Elkin has been studying the work for 13. John has been studying the work for over 50, as Jim Porter as well. So we are over 200 years of Russell experience here on the screen tonight. Isn't that exciting? So welcome everyone. Before we begin our official broadcast, our official show here, conversation with you all tonight, let's just go ahead and take a moment to recalibrate here in 2025. Tune in to the Universal Heartbeat, the beautiful ocean video that John has given to us to use here. So if you would just tune in, you can keep your eyes open or closed, but just breathe deeply. And just take a moment. Drop down into your heart, recognizing your universality and your connection with all things. Become present here in this moment. Recognizing that everything you need to know is right there in nature. May you set your intentions for an incredibly uplifting 2025. So exciting to have you all with us here tonight. And as you find yourself coming back, you can open your eyes. John, what a gorgeous sunset that was that you had recorded, correct?
Yes, sunrise. Yes.
Sunrise. Okay, it was a sunrise. I wasn't quite sure. Sunrise. So we wanted to remind everyone here today. So talk about just a powerful way. We are here in Unit 8. Is that incredible or what? We have been at this for a long time. So if you'll take a look here at the screen, you're going to take a snapshot of what we are about here in Unit 8. And the one tonight is about God's universal language of light. So take a look at that here. And just wanted to remind you that we are here focusing on the home study course. And as you'll take a look at the next image there is Unit 8. You may want to take a screenshot of that right quick. Welcome to everyone, our TikTok followers, YouTube followers. Hi, Linda, Bonnie, Don, Deborah, Deb, Karen. So glad to see you. And remember that we are inspired by this particular quote from Walter Russell. And John, if you would, share that quote.
I do not see a quote.
Ken, if you could, share the quote.
Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed.
Thank you so much, Jim. So that is what is driving us here. And we are working on to unfold this home study course. And so I'll just ask the panel right quick before we begin. What stood out to you in this lesson as we entered Unit 8? It's got fewer pages than our other lessons, but bigger concepts. So I'm curious, Jim, what stood out for you?
I was very intrigued by rereading the prelude to this unit.
As was I.
And that was great and in depth. And it's a reminder that as we reside in what we believe is an individual body, we need to remain constantly aware that we are a universal being at one with all. That's what will turn mankind around.
All right, love that. Ken, what stood out to you for this lesson?
The forms of communication, I think, are brilliant. I think it's going to be a really exciting lesson. We're going to talk about how we can walk out in our backyard and start to learn that God's been communicating this all along, and we're going to highlight some things we can look for. So I'm very excited about translating this and getting that communication going on of how we become more mindful of God consciousness.
Thank you. Karen, weigh in. I'll go to John and then Margaret.
I think I like what everybody said. So I'm going to put a part that when I was doing the video that I went, and it had to do with time and how it just is cyclical, but it had to do with the 0 point, how there is no time. It's just the pulsation and the rhythm. And that was the punctuation at the end that went, ooh.
Love that. Love that. John?
Well, what came to me was the brilliance of the Russells saying, okay, now it's time to roll up your sleeves. We've laid the groundwork. We've made the separation for you between mind and body, your mind, and let's get going. And there's no turning back.
Love that. Margaret.
Yeah, my big takeaway is that they say it's an idea body and not matter. In other words, they're trying to change our thinking. So instead of thinking of matter as substance, they want us to think of it as an idea that has a body instead of matter.
I appreciate that. And what's fascinating to me, the home study course is meant to be read every year, one unit a month every year, and when you get to the end of the year, you do it again. And to me, this is my third time through the home study course, and I saw this particular unit with fresh eyes, and I was really excited about it. Before we dive in, I did want to go ahead and bring us up to the page before the prelude. So it's the second page here for the home study course, and I wanted to remind us a couple of things. Yes, scroll down, James. First of all, if you would take a look at the copyright dates right there, I wanted to remind everybody that this was something that was timeless. So if you'll scroll down just a bit, James, the first highlighted, go up. So right there. So it was first copyrighted in 1951, and you'll see how the copyrights have gone through. And I just wanted to remind everybody just how timeless this is. But what I also wanted to ask our seasoned Russell students is I really paid attention to the books that they recommended. Anything that you all wanted to comment on that? Because I know the Bhagavad Gita is one of my favorites, but I thought this was really a neat book reading list as a follow-up. Any thoughts?
Well, let me jump in here real quick. The books that are there are part of, remember, we're a university, and they had to establish a university curriculum. And these were all part of the curriculum that you read along with the course. So it's actually, I'd love to someday see them all back in print again.
Love that. Maybe that's all something we can all add to our personal library. I will certainly do that. You have them all already, Jim. All right. I'm working on it. So let's go ahead and dive into the prelude. That's on the next page, please. And I'm going to ask if Margaret would read the first paragraph, please. It starts with future generations.
Okay. Future generations of gradually unfolding spiritual man must sooner or later realize that man is divine. As long as he thinks of himself as body instead of eternal mind, and as long as he senses with his body instead of thinking with the universal mind, he will think individually and not universally. When he at long last discovers his eternal self, he then knows that he is universal and can no longer think of himself as an individual.
Very powerful. I wanted to encourage our everyone who's listening in to go ahead and type in the universal mind, with mind being capitalized. The universal mind. John, would you continue reading those next two paragraphs, please?
Yes, I will. Civilizations of individuals may come and go, as many have gone, and as this one is now so rapidly declining, but always the cause of decline is individual thinking and individual concern. Individuals believe they can acquire by taking. Universalists know they can acquire only by giving. When all men shall have learned the lesson of love sufficiently to become one in their thinking, they will become one in their giving to the whole instead of to the self. When that day of unity comes, we shall then have a civilization which will endure, but not until.
So let's pause for a moment and ask the panel if you have any thoughts on the prelude before we continue. Jim, I know you said this was one of your favorite parts of the lesson this time.
It is, and that line, Universalists know they can acquire only by giving. That is a perfect description of a genius. The first stage of giving more than you take from life.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful. Anybody else want to chime in on the prelude? Because that was obviously, they set it apart by itself. They obviously wanted us to pay special attention to it.
What I like is that if you think universally, you are not a selfish person. In other words, you're always looking for the good of all. And that doesn't mean to discount yourself, but you're always thinking more broad and about the entire picture and not just me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we think about how opposite that is compared to what we see in society today. Very much so. So, Ken, let's go ahead and dive into the first page of the lesson. This is over here on page 575. And the title here was God's Universal Language of Light. And before I have you share in that next paragraph what it is, I did want to ask the seasoned Russell students. It said here that the substance of the lesson was taken from Leo's early writings, which will be later printed in a book called entitled Out of the Silence. Did that ever get published?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Actually, I think that her God will work with you, but not for you is essentially the out of the silence.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ken, let's go ahead and dive into that first paragraph because it starts us here about language.
A language is something created by all creatures of the animal kingdom to convey the meaning of an idea from one manifestation of idea to another. Insects, birds, fishes, animals of the forest and jungle, and humans all issue sounds which convey meanings to their like kind. And all such meanings convey the idea of matehood, hunger, fear, anger, and other ideas which are necessary for the survival, continuity, and education of the countless pairs of idea bodies which constitute creation. We have
All right.
purposely not.
Go ahead to that next sentence.
I think it's good because they were introducing the idea of idea bodies, which is what Margaret was talking about. We have purposely not as yet used the term idea bodies, but will henceforth do so to replace the term matter, now given to create manifestation of idea in this divided universe of motion. For every form of matter ever created, such as simple atomic bodies or complex systems of bodies, manifest and represent one of the countless ideas which the Creator has divided from the one whole idea, which needs but one word, creation, to convey its meaning.
All right. So, and let me go to this next sentence as we then ask the panel to talk about this. A language, therefore, does not necessarily mean spoken or written words. Anything which conveys meaning is a language, for it extends the idea of one idea body to another idea body. So I thought it was really important that we pause here for a moment and talk about this because they are laying down the idea here that language isn't the spoken word. And I would bet that the vast majority of people assimilate equal language to words, but they're saying it goes way beyond that. Correct?
Can I ask a question? So what does it mean when Bonzo does this to me?
That's a language.
It's like, what's the matter, you Ken? Don't you get this yet after 28 years?
You, man? You talking to me?
That would be language. And so I love what Deborah
yes.
said here in the chat box. She said the language of love requires no words.
Yes.
There's that one right on.
Yes.
That's the language of love right there.
Well, the language of love is like an energy. It feels so incredibly powerful. Bonnie says it's even the idea of body language. I love the idea here because the word language, I've always had a love affair with words. So words have always played a very special role in my life. I love words. In fact, that's part of what even Ken, I love the way he uses words. Part of why I like the Russells is I love the way they are so poetic in their writings. Who else would like to comment on this idea of language before we go on to the next axiom?
Well, one of the things that jumps out to me, being a big fan of studying near-death experiences, people that come and go over and come back, is the first thing they say off the bat. It's a rare exception. Is that language is not necessary. It's pure thought. You just think, and it's known by all those around you. So language is a limiting thing that we have to use here to communicate because we don't communicate with thought. So it's it's what I think that's what gives us this sense of being individualist.
Just
language.
think if we could communicate with thought, how much better we would be, and we will arrive there in the intersensory perceptions. That's what this is all about. I think the closer one is to God in terms of their life, the more they pick up on things without any language, and they do that intersensory. I know in my relationship and my relationship with people who are close to me, I'm thinking about them, boom, the phone rings. I mean, that happens all the time. I think in my life, I can't even count how often that happens. And I've always come from the school of, when someone comes to mind that I haven't been thinking of, I always feel like that's God's way of telling me to reach out to them and see how they are, and send some love.
Yes,
So
please comment in the chat box how many of you relate to that, because I actually, in the presentation that I did called Cosmic Romance, I talked about the idea of telepathy. I believe that is far more powerful, and I really want that to become encouraging and speaking out more about it, because I would like that to become much more common. What's so interesting to me is that we can take a look at our phone and we have no problems knowing that a text message is going to come into our phone, but we have a problem thinking that Jim may send me a thought, or that Ken may send me a thought. So when I talk about the fact that Ken and I actually met before we ever physically met in this universe, we'll drop that link in the chat box right here for any of you that want to hear that story. It has to do with this whole idea of language as a waveform, as an idea body. So, all right. So let me ask the group. So as we go into the next paragraph, I wanted to ask you all, did you know what the word axiom means?
Yes. It's a universal principle.
Well, so I looked it up according to Webster, and it was a statement accepted as true. And so as we go over here on page 576, and we're looking towards the bottom, John, I'd like to ask you, please, if you would read that first paragraph and go into that second paragraph, because this lays down, start with idea is a part. This lays down the foundation for today.
Idea is a part of the eternal, uncreated, and undivided white mind light, which God is. While idea bodies are spectrum-divided extensions of that undivided white light, which centers every wave of them. And I'll demonstrate for that's what they're talking about right there. Okay. All right. God's knowing is that one white light, but God's thinking is the divided octave wave spectrum of the 4 pairs of spectrum lights, which extend from the white light, 4 on each side, which constitute the thought bodies of mind thinking and mind imagining. So I'll bring that up one more time.
Yeah, there it is.
The 4 pairs of spectrum lights, the octave wave.
Okay. So let me pause for a moment, John, and I'm going to ask James to please bring up slide 26, please. And we're going to go from 26 through 30. I want to just tie this into our flashback for Unit 4. So, John, if you could just relate what you just read to what's here on the screen.
Okay. So we got God up top, the undivided. Thinking begins by desire, and the undivided then becomes the divided. It's male-female pairs. And those male-female pairs are rings of 4. And they stay separated until they unite. And then when they unite, then they return to stillness. It's a simple sequence. You can't get any more simple than those 3 pictures right there, I think.
Okay, so let's take a look at them in a larger fashion here, James. So there's the undivided, and if they had had color in that printing, they probably would have made that maybe even a white, but they were saying the undivided, and then it went into the divided, and then it's the united. And so this is where we keep talking about, if you can read and count to 9, you can know the circle, you can understand, master the secrets of the universe, and then go on to the next one, because this ties also into it. So just tie this in right quick, John, before we continue, because this was a huge concept.
Right. So everything evolves, right, from idea. So they're using examples here of the human genre, if you will. And everything starts as an embryo, and then a baby, and then you grow into childhood, and then you reach adolescence. All right. And then from adolescence to grown men and women. Now, the 404 is important. And that word above there, the united, is what is important, as that's where the male and the female come together. And that, so that bottom figure of the last one is what identifies what's happening right here.
Okay,
And it's
so
not
let's go to the
necessarily,
let's
I'm sorry,
go to
go
the
ahead.
next image, James. Go to the next image, James, because I want to tie this in. So this is what you were talking about, right, John?
Yes. In this sequence, they're just happening to be showing male and female, but it doesn't necessarily mean just, Homo sapiens. It is related to everything that is seen
Animal, mineral, and vegetable.
falls under that sequence without exception. No exceptions.
Even rocks have matehood.
Okay, so we're going to continue the conversation. I do want to bring up Deb Tonkin said she said this. Margaret, if you'll read her comment there on the screen.
Yes, I recently received a download telepathic message. Death is the ultimate illumination.
Fascinating, fascinating. Deborah has a question for the panel before we continue.
But
And
just
it
so
says,
long you're not so tempted to want to have an illumination too soon. That's a good statement. Hey man, this world sucks. I want to have an illumination. I'm out.
And maybe we could say rest is the ultimate illumination.
There
Yes.
you
Sure.
go.
Kimberly,
There you
could
go.
we point out to the audience that colorized version of the male female and the red and blue that you and Ken posed so that we could get those figures on this
thank you.
chart?
All those years ago. Thank you, John.
Well,
All those
now
years
that's
ago.
an interesting statement. And since you said that, I do want to give to the idea of what that means. In proper matehood, when two people are proper mates, they become united in a sexual union, and therefore there's no division. You become one. That's why when you're in proper matehood, you actually get lost when you're making love. You lose yourself to find yourself in the other person, and therefore you become one especially in the making of love at the moment of of that generation. So that's why it's so important to have a balanced mate in your life, and I think the only way you can do that is to give love, to find love, to be re-given love. It is not something we get; it's something we give, and then and we're always re-given that love. I believe that's how it came into my life. I can't speak for Kimberly, but I do believe that as I know her to be an extremely loving person, I'm an extremely loving person, and so our love has united us as one.
All right, there you go. So we have a question here from Deborah for the panel. Deborah says this, and then I'm going to ask Karen's comment. She says, "How does love integrate into the mind light to become the undivided?" How does love integrate into the mind light to become the undivided?
Actually, love is the base. Love is already there. It doesn't have to be integrated. In other words, it's always the underlying stillness that's all pervasive, and it's always there. In other words, it never leaves, whether it's invisible or whether it's being manifested in creation. It's always the underlying base.
Okay, love
And
that. Anybody else?
there's no opposite word in the English language for love. We've talked about that before. Remember the love is the motivator for creation. Creation comes from the desire to express love, the creator's desire to express the love the creator has for the enlightened mind, for the undivided. In order to do that, it must divide itself so that it can find itself. The mission of man, woman on this earth is to find that Christ consciousness, and if you don't like that term, to find that undivided spectrum where we just spoke about in the prelude, where you walk in this world and you're universal. So individual love is great, but think of the power of collective love, which is on this podcast right now. You have a collection of love carrying a message to all those that are ready to hear this. And this is a message worth hearing. And it's a message that will take you to that next level, wherever you've been. It doesn't matter.
Can we jump back to this for a minute?
Yes.
This is absolute universal love. This is absolute universal love manifested, the perfect sphere from the perfect cube. But there are degrees of less than perfect love where the mates are not perfectly mated, and you don't end up with this. You end up with some sphere or misshaped sphere that can be both self-destructive and group destructive. And that's what happens when civilizations begin to fall. love isn't achieved. It's known throughout all of creation, but it's not achieved in creation until enough of us understand our universality and that this is the goal, to manifest absolute love in the material world, in ourselves.
And as Leo always said, that in every transaction, if there is a residue of unbalance, that residue will create problems. In other words, everybody must make an effort to balance that out. Otherwise, you'll have a residue of illness, a residue that's troublesome. So life is a continual attempt to balance out every transaction. Because if
Well,
you
let me
don't,
ask.
you won't be able to sleep.
Well, and that's very true. So let's be honest, thinking about all the relationships that we've all had on the screen, as well as those of you that are listening and tuning in. So glad to see our TikTok viewers, our YouTube viewers, and our Facebook viewers. So let's think about this. How many of you were ever taught that relationships, true loving relationships, were about balance? I was never taught that. I mean, so I'm just kind of curious from the group. Had you known that relationships were about balance, would you have made different choices in your life?
Oh yeah.
This is a moment of truth here, so I'm asking the panel.
I believe we all seek that. Yeah, we all seek that, but we seldom in our relationships and our interactions with other people. Not only those are our mates and our family, but our extended community. It's the constant, and we all feel the disruption that takes place when people in the extended community are taking more than they're giving, because of that thought of being an individual that deserves more than someone else. And that's what we're trying to turn around here is teach ourselves to see ourselves as a universal being trying to work with the rest of the universe to manifest true balance and true love.
And also, even if a relationship is not totally balanced, there's still a dance, right?
Yes.
And every once in a while, you will feel balance. It may be short-lived, but the entire dance of trying to make that relationship fruitful and, achieving, that in itself is a beautiful creation. So
Love that.
you shouldn't always expect things to be, roses. In other words, the actual dance is how you learn. I mean, that's a blessing, really, to even be given the opportunity to learn that dance.
I'm going to remember that. And Bonnie says, trust me, if I had known about the balance, I would presently be on your panel. She would have. So I'm just curious from the group, because in this reality, we're taught that opposites attract. We're not taught about balance, in all fairness. So that's why I'm bringing this up.
The Russells make it very clear that is not true in their teachings. That's a false image.
Okay. John, you want to comment before I have us go back to the context?
No, I'll back Jim up on that statement. There is no such thing in nature as opposites attracting. What the hell is that anyway? Opposites attract.
But I think that individuals can have complementary strengths. In other words, one person will be stronger in something than another, and vice versa. So in that sense, there is still this play and this back and forth that actually can lead to great accomplishment.
Yeah, you're talking about moving towards center to find balance and love, and it is a process. And where the Russells give the beautiful example of sodium chloride is the perfect cube in body mate, where nitroglycerin is a bad mate and doesn't take much to make it explosive. Those are your extremes, but what you're talking about, and rightfully so, is all those interactions in between those extremes that lead us toward evolution into divinity.
That's right.
To simplify that, remember that when you walk, you must lose your balance to find your balance all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So very, very fascinating conversation. So let's finish with this page before we go into our first break, because I want to really focus on that first sentence that John said. God's knowing is that one white light. So scroll down just a moment, James. God's up. I mean, scroll up. God, yeah, underneath the green, the one that's underlined in green. God's knowing is that one white light. So I really want us to have us all focus on that for a moment. And as it goes to that next paragraph, it says it has not entered within human consciousness to think of matter as thought bodies or of waves of pure thought recordings, which God, the sole teacher, makes use of to intercommunicate with every thought body in the moving universe. Neither does it occur to anyone that everything in the universe is constantly talking to every other thing and telling it what it is, what it's doing, and what its purpose is. And it says, an apple, for example, does not say in words, I am an apple. Its form, color, odor, and taste tell you that without the need of words, but you identify that apple idea by giving it a word in man's language. This really spoke to me because I've had so many people in the years that I've been on social media over the past 10 years, people wanting me to define what it is that I believe. And I finally just got into the telling people that I lived by the tree philosophy, that I simply live and I look at trees in all of its majesty, and trees just are. There's no explanation. They don't have a sign saying I am a tree. They're not banging the tree next to them telling them that you should be my kind of tree. They simply are. And that is the belief system that I have adopted for quite some time. So that's where this really spoke to me, of saying we really need no explanation. And for me, divinity really can't be brought down to small words in man's language, because I believe it's so much more. Any last thought before we take our first break to the panel?
I think I like that saying, I am that I am.
I am that I am. Absolutely
Isn't
love
that,
that.
isn't that from the old Popeye cartoons? I am's what I am, and that's all that I am.
You're right. Popeye said it all. So why don't we go ahead and take our first 3-minute break? We have big ideas coming back, so be sure to stand up, get some oxygen, and All right. If you're within earshot, if you will find your way back. So for those of you that are new, we try to take a break around every 30 minutes. These are big concepts. We want you to be able to decentrate for a moment and actually absorb what it is that we're talking about. So we're going to dive a lot more into this, but I did want to be sure I noticed something here in our chat box. So right now we have 3D frequency. You will see that in the chat box. And I believe that is our own volunteer, Scott Vanderpool. So Scott, if you would confirm that. He was joking there about Be My Kind of Tree, laughing, but he is the one that we've mentioned on this broadcast multiple times, that he has his own 3D frequency channel that's there on YouTube, and it talks about the Russell science. And so John worked with Scott when he was there before. And John, just a thought, I am 99% sure that is Scott, and just encourage everybody, if they would, that Scott really, I've never seen anybody have so many notes in their Universal One as Scott. John, you're on mute. If you'll come off mute, everybody on the panel, go ahead and come off mute, please. John, mute again. He'll unmute right quick. He's working on it. All right, there you are.
Yes.
So want to just see if you could comment about Scott right quick, because I wanted everybody to notice that he was with us here this evening.
Yes. Scott Vanderbilt. Yes.
Yeah. He John was had worked with him when he was there at the university, and John Scott is been one of our dedicated volunteers studying for quite some time. So we just wanted to simply honor that and build as much camaraderie as we can around students here. All right, so Ken, what I'm thinking is that I wanted to go ahead down to about the bottom of the top part of 577, and where I have the yellow arrow there, and I thought if you could read those last few sentences, and it start with "You are forever."
Yeah. You are forever talking to nature, and nature is forever talking to you. The more you do this, the more you acquire God awareness, for God is nature. And that is what we mean by cosmic thinking, for cosmic thinking is actually talking to God as God is forever talking to you in his universal language of light. So what we're talking about is here, you're going to get down and we're going to talk about 9 different forms of communication in which nature communicates with us, and then the 3 forms in which God communicates with us. And what we're going to also learn here is the more that you talk to nature, the more that nature will talk back to you, and that really synergizes and enhances your God mentality. See, I had 70,000 thoughts a day, which is what the average human being has. I found for me years ago, I was a self-talker. I talk to me all the time. I talk to me about what you're wearing, what you're not wearing, what you should be wearing, what you shouldn't be wearing, what kind of weight you should be, what kind of weight you shouldn't be. I'm an architect. I'm an electrical engineer because I read an article. I know so many things, but the reality of it is I don't really know anything because I'm in and of myself. And so therefore I'm always looking for recognition. So as a self-talker, I realized that at 70,000 thoughts a day, I have a choice. I can talk to God. I'm going to be talking either to myself or to God. And I believe that's the same for every human being. So I learned to God talk instead of self-talk. I replaced self-talking with God talking. And that's what we're talking about now, what's going to happen and be taught in the next lesson, a few pages here, of how to enhance your conversation, your communion with God. So there is no separation is the ultimate ideal. And in that, we can all achieve that. It is not anything, nobody has any special right to it. Think about it. It would be like saying, I've got a thimble full of God. Well, let me reverse this. John Bonzel's got a thimble full of God, and I got a bucket full of God. Like I would have more God in me than him. So, right? That's a joke here, John, just so you know. But the point of it is we all have the same amount. And I think that's where universality comes in for me. Is when I look at anybody, even somebody that may not be behaving really well, I still have to remember the same God that I talk to and relate to in me is in them. Otherwise, I'm not in this world. So everybody is of God and everything is of God. The idea is to stay in communion for me in terms of the lessons that I've read. The more I talk to God, the more I am free from the bondage of self. And the more ideas come, concepts come, telepathy comes, things that music comes, art comes, things comes that I never thought would come to me or that I had talents for. So they are in all of us. Everything is in all of us as we're being taught and as we will learn.
Well, and Deb has a great comment there. She says, that which you notice notices you. I experienced that with the call of a crow. I notice him in the tree, and I know he notices me, kind of like his eye is on the sparrow. I love that. And Karen, I know that's one of your favorite things as well. That's really kind of your propensity, is that you see God in nature all the time.
Absolutely. We're all made of the same thing. We're all made of the particles in light. It all charges through us like an electrical discharge, and it all is a weave. So absolutely.
But I want to ask the panel, and I'd like to ask others to chime in the chat box here, all of our viewers that are there from the multiple channels, do you really talk to nature? So let me ask the panel this, because before I really came into the Russell work, I kind of talked to nature, but the Russell work has made nature even more magical for me. So in a practical way, how do you interact with nature? Jim?
Me, it's no longer or not as much in language. I don't think in my brain and say, "Oh, your tree, you look beautiful today." I just commune and pick up that silent love that radiates between both of us. That's something that comes with age, and daily meditations helped a lot too.
Okay. John?
Well, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So Kimberly Faith gifted me this nature piece. And it is now
Kimberly and
Ken
Ken.
Pearson. And Ken Pearson, I think he had something to do with it, but probably very little. But anyway, there you go. So no words needed. You see God, you see beauty, you acknowledge it. And so the goal is to see beauty in everything, everywhere. So thank you, Ms. Kimberly.
I'm going to say something there, John, about that, what you're talking about. When you look at that flower, don't see the flower, see the idea of the flower. And now you get into a deeper concept. What's the idea behind the flower? Right? You can look at a tree. What's the idea behind a tree? Can somebody tell me the idea behind a tree? We talk about it all the time.
Go ahead.
It gives oxygen, and we re-give it carbon dioxide. So the idea behind the tree is to give us the breath of life.
I thought it was to build houses.
Oh, yeah. You a lumberjack. You was a lumberjack.
I thought it was for shade.
Yeah, there you go.
That too. And you can hang your hammock in and just sit there and look under it.
I thought it was for a perch for the birds.
Oh,
Yeah.
all those ideas.
Feeder. We got a bird feeder here. It's kind of like looking at an acorn, right? Can you see a 40-foot oak tree in that acorn? But you know it's there. So
Yes.
you're communing with the acorn, the idea of the acorn being a tree. The minute you go past the acorn, you get into idea. The idea is to become a tree. Then the idea of the tree is to give oxygen as a giver of life for us.
So I'm going to bring up a couple of comments, but before we do, Karen, you had a thought?
Yeah, I do talk to the air. When I'm on the airplane and we're getting bounced, I literally talk to the air because I know it is alive. It is an element. And so I've been on many airplanes where it starts to rock and roll and I and the air are one and we have a conversation. And on the way down, it's smooth and it's whatever. And I've gotten off of flight attendants go, that was weird. We were supposed to not serve and they didn't serve. And the flight was smooth. So do I think the elements are part of the angels? I do. And I do speak to them. So I'm the one who does speak to the elements.
I do too. The first time Ken saw me actually kiss a tree, he was like, yeah, okay. I mean, like I literally, I love these trees. And so I'm not the only one. Anne Marie says this.
It was when you started French kissing it that started freaking me out.
You just got jealous, man. That's all it was.
Oh, my goodness.
You got jealous.
Oh, look, I turned red. Oh, my God.
Hey, John, can you hold up the plant again?
The plant?
Plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try not to pull it out of its pot.
Let me go sexual with you folks here. Uh-oh. What you're looking at in front of you and all that beauty and that wonderful smell that comes off of is an orgasmic explosion and completion of desire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know that when you smell the fragrance of a rose, that's actually the rose as it is dying or as it is refolding, it brings off a beautiful odor, beautiful fragrance.
Well, we're
That's
about to
actually
talk.
while it's dying.
Wow, I did not know that. Well, we're about to talk about that in just a minute, but I wanted to bring up some of the folks. Anne Marie says yes, she talks to nature every day on her walks, so kudos. Bonnie says I do. I talk to my seeds when I plant my garden, and I apologize to the bugs when I flush them down the toilet. Deborah says yes, all the time, and the sacred sharing is beautiful. And Jean says yes, I talk to trees, flowers, the sky, and the sun, sometimes aloud, sometimes silently. Wow, so many neat comments here. And Karen Mahan says this, yes, I honor the elements as universal authorities. And Rita is laughing at us. So we are so glad to have you all on this journey with us. So very, very powerful. So I wanted to come here and as we're getting ready to go into the bottom of page 577. So for those of you that have a copy of your home study course, you're going to want to notice this because this is a really, really important section. And in fact, Karen has gifted us with an incredible video here at the end tonight. And it talks about here at the last part, it says God's language of light consists but of 9 words, which apply to his body, and 3 which apply to his mind. So can you all in the chat box say 9 words body, 3 words mind? All right, so we want to separate between body and mind. And John, if you would slowly for us read what those 9 words are.
Remember, God doesn't mind because you're not mad.
A little cosmic humor there.
All right, here we go. The 9 words which reach man and all living things of nature are as follows: identity, motion, sound, odor, color, form, temperature, rhythm, time. The 3 words which reach his mind are instinct, inspiration, and imagination.
All right, so let's slow down for just a moment because the rest of this lesson here is based on all of these things. So let's talk about this. The 9 words which apply to his body. So please differentiate between his body and his mind. Jim?
Well, his body is the divided self or selves. The instinct, inspiration, imagination are never manifested. They simply are the launching point of zero from which all manifestation takes place.
Okay, anybody want to add to that, panel?
Well, one is the visual universe and the other is the invisible.
Ah, okay, I like that.
Very
I think
simple. That's nice.
that's a lovely way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? All right, so let's go ahead and continue as we go down. So if we go on here on page 578, I'm going to just bring up a comment here in the second paragraph. It's necessary at this point to define the meaning of knowledge, for it is generally accepted idea that knowledge is acquired through sensed observation. So, Margaret, what does sensed observation mean?
Yes, so man thinks that by his observation and his conclusions of those observations that he's acquiring knowledge, but he isn't really. He is acquiring information that he can reason with, but it's not actual knowing.
Okay. So let's go
yeah.
ahead and bring up an image, Margaret. So this is this sensed, because James is going to bring up image 34 that we had already pulled together. If you could connect what you're just saying to this image about the train, because Russell talks about this, that this is one of those areas where our senses actually aren't right.
Our senses tell us that the lines meet, but we know that that's not so. So in other words, the railroad tracks, that's an idea. And the idea is 2 straight lines. It's manifested, but because of the limitations of our senses, our eyeball, the manifestation doesn't always appear as what the idea is.
Okay.
It also shows that it's a curved universe, right? The Earth is round.
Okay. All right. So I thought this was a really great way for us to understand how our senses
curved
can
world.
deceive us. Okay. So let's go on down here then to the bottom of page 578. It says, we therefore define knowledge as awareness of idea. So if you would in the chat box, please put down knowledge as awareness of idea. What does that mean, John?
Well, an idea represents something, right? That thing. So whatever it may be, like we just saw the expression of the idea of that beautiful flower, right? All right. But that flower, it really never left mind. The idea never leaves mind. It's just sent out through a division of God's mind to express the idea of that flower. That's a big hurdle for a lot of people. You see it, you touch it, you smell it, you say, "Oh, well, this is real." Well, it's not.
Well, I know for me, when you start to study a lot of these metaphysical things and a variety of things, you find out that, the desk that we're sitting our laptops on isn't real. So when you start, it really is, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, all of this isn't necessarily real. And it does take a difference in your body. But anybody who is very much on a sensed perception of the world, they won't even look at it. John?
Well, I'd like to add a little something to this for our audience. Okay. So if we see the expression of an idea, which means it is in motion and it has been projected upon the cinema of creation. So people that have emotional attachments to things, think about that for a moment. Why would you be emotionally attached to something that isn't even real? It's just an idea, but you think it's real, and then we all attach our own value system to it. But I think that would help a lot of people to understand that, this is just a play of creation. It's a simulation, and it's not the idea. It's just the simulation of the idea.
I think that's really expressed in the one way I always say, go look in the mirror and point to where you're at in that body, in that mirror, right? Where are you at? Where am I located in this body? There's no spot. I can't say my left arm, my right arm, I can't say here, right? A lot of people, I'm here. Again, that's the sense observation. But I don't feel any older than I did when I was 19, 20 years old, but my body definitely has aged. So I can't be my body because my mind is eternal, right? And it's the fountain of youth is in the mind. It's not in the body, clearly. So, again, when you think of anybody you love, what is it you love about them? Is their left arm, their right arm, or is it the person inside? Like, I know John Bonsall, I know everybody on this panel, right? And that which I know about them, I cannot see, but that which I see about them, I cannot know. I don't know if Bonsall's right arm is bothering.
All right, so.
But I have a question, because it kind of defies to me. So we go through liquid, solids, and gases. So we are still, this part is a solidified, condensed form of the molecules, which we can touch and feel in this present domain. So I think sometimes it's an expression of who and what we are here and now. It changes. It goes through cycles. We go through, as John said, I'm getting my banana spots for my last one. So you know what? That's my aging spots. So I go through transitions just like light does. And so I'm going through the phases. And so for me to say that I haven't acknowledged what I've created or what I'm here to make manifest and bring forward, and that it's not tangible to you or them, is to me, it's not necessarily a truth. Is it a projection of a movie screen? I can unplug it and then I'm not there and I'm back in, or I'm not ever. But I don't want it, because we are here. That's why we look at the flower. That's why we look at the trees. That's why we look at the sunsets. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, is not to totally dismiss, because it is a creation and a play. We've solidified it in this domain, and it will go away and it will come back and remanifest. but be aware of what you're creating at any point in time. And I think the one thing that I did get from this lesson is that this is a continuum, so don't waste it.
Yes, body has function and purpose, and we don't want to lose sight of that. Also, I've joked with all of you many times that I have a workshop, and I can be thoroughly convinced and reason all day long that even though I am manifesting as a body, I am not the body that I'm manifesting as, until I hit my thumb with the hammer in the workshop. Now, for the next several minutes, you're going to have a hard time convincing me I'm not the body, because pain makes that a reality for you. So, and discomfort, but it's all holding on to the knowledge that this is not you. So when you choose this over the welfare of others, that's your downfall. That's the individual versus the totality of the whole.
Well,
Yeah,
for
remember,
me,
micro and macro there is no difference, as it says in the Divine Iliad. So when we get into this quantum stuff, it's not realistic because it doesn't correlate with the macro. Micro and macro, it does not matter. It's the same 8-step, 9-step octave process. Creation operates the same way. It's just in different pressure variances. So, in terms of not making it too confusing about what we are, what we aren't are. If we were our bodies, then they would never age, right? So the body is a temporary vessel for what? For the mind.
well, and I want to pause for a moment, because for someone who used to formerly take life too serious, okay, I still sometimes struggle with that. My understanding and learning all of these things has helped me not take life too serious. Anybody relate to that that's listening here today? So when you learn this and you begin to realize that we are in the cinema of creation, and that this is but one act of many, that all of a sudden you are a little more lighter. You take life a little lighter. You still use it, Karen. You still are wise about it, but you don't take everything so serious. You don't take everything you see in the news so serious. You don't see what everybody's doing so serious. You begin to approach it with, I approach it more and more with the wonder of a child, thinking, wow, this is fascinating. John?
Well, what I wanted to share was that over the last X number of years, I have taught myself to devalue the physical. But it doesn't mean, I can still hear Leo saying this to me now, but you don't want to dehumanize it to the point that you don't become an active role in creation, right? Know what it is and what it isn't, and appreciate the beauty of this flower, but within, that it's a flower. So if it fell off the table and one of the flowers broke off, whatever, it's like, okay, it fell off, but I could take a different reaction and get upset and cause tensions and scream and so on and so forth. So
you might do that you might do that if we messed up your uranium cabinet.
That's right.
That might be different.
That could be. But I found more of it today.
Yeah, let's just say forgiveness would not come as quickly.
Not as quickly. All right. So a couple of thoughts here. So Deborah asked a question of the group. She says, is it pain that allows us to consciously integrate the love light and anchor that into matter?
Yes, discomfort. Yes. If you don't allow discomfort to rule, but allow your inner loving self to manifest through it. That's what we were all talking about earlier. We were talking about relationships. In all relationships, there's moments and times of discomfort, but love will conquer that if you hold on to it. Margaret said it beautifully, and that's the thing to fall back on. Forgiveness, love. Yeah.
I was going to add, Kim, that the Russells make it very clear it's the idea, which is uncreated, and then the manifestation, which is the visual creation. Actually, I think that both have equal value. In other words, you have the invisible universe, which is idea, okay, and then you have the visual, which is the manifestation. You have to have both. It's why you have to have silence in between the words. Otherwise, if it's all noise all the time, it's very meaningless.
That's-
So you have to have the invisible and the visible interchanging constantly. And that is the whole play of creation. So
Yes.
actually, the value of not substance, but an idea body, the value of that is 50% of it. Right?
Very poetic, very said, very poetically.
I think that's great, but I think we live in a world where most people are sensed bodies. And I know that I lived in my senses for many, many years until I learned to read knowledge and bring it into my life and incorporate it into my life. Is when I noticed some freedom from the body. It's painful to be in the body all the time. It's not always comfortable. So to be out of the body in meditation is sort of so it doesn't mean that I've left my body, but it doesn't mean I'm also in my body. Right? When I'm in meditation, the idea is to find rest from the physical sensation. So, and again, I do believe that balance is a part of it. We are in the drama of creation. In other words, we cannot be immune to grief and suffering. As a matter of fact, our capacity to grief and suffer, as is stated in the home study course, is equal to our capacity for happiness and joy. So they both they are the pistons what drive this drama of creation for sure.
And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that humanity at its current evolutionary stage is just approaching the beginning or the end of the pagan barbarian age and the beginning of the age of genius. So we are a painting half finished. So we have
that's very poetic, Jim. Let's pause for that a minute. We're a painting half finished.
Yes. So
No,
when
we're
we
not
look,
half finished. We're just a few strokes on the painting so far.
Yeah,
I agree with
I'm a little
that.
more optimistic than that, John.
All right, I'll give you 4 strokes instead. Okay.
All right. So just a couple of things before I have us take our next break here. I wanted to go back to something there towards the bottom of page 578 because I want to get us to the point of talking about God, the supreme cosmic teacher. In the green highlighted, it says, it is a basic fact of nature. Notice how nature is capitalized. That's part of what I loved about this work, that all living things are forever seeking God, whether they know it or not. For God is light. God is light, and every blade of grass, tree, of forest, animal of the jungle, or rose in your garden is constantly seeking the idea body of light, which the sun is. Now scroll down, if you would, to the yellow highlighted sentence, because it says, the senses of man are his doorway to his mind, all capital, but his sense cannot know ideas. They can but react to the meaning conveyed by idea bodies. Now, this I thought was relatively funny, this last paragraph here. And Jim, if you could read it, because they were talking about what was unfortunate about our educational institutions.
This is unfortunate that our educational institutions and our science are still in such infantile conditions, in condition that they depend entirely upon information gleaned through the senses and consider it impossible to gain it cosmically through inspiration and imagination. Until educators realize that God is the first, last, and only teacher, that truth lies in the invisible. That truth lies in the invisible universe, beyond the reach of man's senses, and that nature always has the last word in every transaction and conclusion of man. The whole human race and its institutions will never transcend their sense limited stage and advance to the stage of genius or cosmic consciousness.
Wow, how powerful. So we are getting ready to go to our next break. And when you see the quote that's on the screen, it is laying the groundwork for what we're coming back to talk about. And those are those 9 things that we were talking about earlier. So we're going to go deep into what each one of those mean. Enjoy your 3 minutes to decentrate. All right. If you are within earshot, if you'll begin to find your way back. And so as we wait for everybody to return, I want to mention a few things. You will see us as a panel work to model the teachings as much as possible. Notice at the beginning of our broadcast that we, instead of doing a regular countdown from 10 through 1, we start from 9 through 1. Recognize that we give you time to decentrate so that we can come back here and come back and centrate. Is that what the word is? Decentrate? What's the opposite of decentrate?
Concentrate.
Thank you. Concentrate. I have a moment. Listen, it's freezing in my little studio here, but I'm making it. So we are trying to model everything that it is that we're teaching. And so I want to say a gracious thank you to all of our viewers as we have going into this last section. And so, John, if you would, right here at the bottom of page 579, if you'll read the title of this, that's circled in green, is this why they say if you can read and count to 9? If you'll scroll down right there.
Yes, God, the supreme cosmic teacher. And before I finish this, I want to share with you one of my favorite quotes from the teachings and from Leo herself. When she looks at you and says that when you have God as your teacher, you need no earthly teachers. And it took years and years and years, to kind of integrate that. So the more you find silence and commune with the Creator, you'll realize, I don't need that guy over there. Because if I knew how to communicate and ask properly, God will reveal anything that you need to know or want to know.
So let's pause for a moment there, because this whole past 30 years, there's been a huge push for everybody to go to university, to go to college. And I am beginning to realize that not having some of those advanced degrees is one of the greatest gifts I ever gave myself. So I'm very grateful, because I actually searched more towards God. So nothing wrong with going to get increased knowledge. I do believe, though, it is important for us as society is not to place value on just advanced degrees. And that's where I believe as society that we have lost our way. I have watched, especially in the corporate world, we place way too much emphasis on advanced degrees when some of the wisest people I have ever met are the ones that are in tune with the divine in a way that doesn't have a certificate along with it. So I would say it goes to balance. I don't think there's any problem with learning a great deal. A lot of people learn a lot on the journey. And we need to, I believe in society, is value those that are learning from the divine teacher. So,
Just one quick correction, Kim.
yes.
When you say going to university for advanced knowledge, it's going to university for advanced information.
Advanced information.
Okay. Or you can say going to university for further indoctrination.
So, Margaret, I was being gentle. So you're right, because I work with a lot of people who do have a lot of advanced degrees. But you're right. The more you have, the more you are programmed or indoctrinated. And I can actually map out the feedback loop that shows people why they're being indoctrinated and how. Maybe I'll do that on a future broadcast. So thank you.
That needs to be
point
the
noted and corrected. Yes.
That needs to be
Kim, that's something for our summer speaker series at the museum.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, how
you got to watch these 50-year students, Kimberly. They are those little words, man.
It's teaching people how to recognize the difference between education and indoctrination. And when you can do that, they don't fall for it anymore. And when everyone demands information, education over indoctrination, then it'll happen.
All right, so we're going to dive into the different descriptions here of each one. So let's go ahead. So Karen, if you would, just read what identity is, please.
Identity, the fact that every created thing is what it is and cannot be any other thing, gives it its identity. As a violet, for example, cannot be a rose, and an oak tree or a man.
Okay, so love the power and the simplicity of that. If everyone could simply be what they are designed to be, talk about how beautiful. All right, so Margaret, if you'll go into 2, what is motion?
Motion is the first step away from the static universe from which the dynamic universe is extended. Therefore, all creating things move in wave cycles to generate compression, pressures, and heat, which radiates back to the cold of its origin for reincarnation of the idea it manifests. Motion is perpetually telling its secrets to observant ones who desire to be taught its various effects.
All right, very, very powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and share sound before I end up having one of the others volunteer to do odor. So sound, and I'm doing this because as someone who's got a significant hearing impairment, sound has always meant something very different to me. Every created thing emits the sound of varying kinds. This applies to even the atom at its first explosion, which causes its emergence from its seed in the inert gases. So for those of you that have your home study course copy, be sure you circle that word inert gases, because you'll hear us talk more about that later, to its return to them. Such sounds are beyond man's range of hearing, but many can be amplified so they can be heard. The emanations of radium, for example, can be amplified, so the sound is like a miniature Gatling gun. And then it goes on to talk about even fishes of the sea emit sounds. And so it talks about how sound are one of these 9 things. All right, who wants to dive into odor?
Ken, I think that's a good one for you.
I was just thinking the same thing based on hanging out with you the other day. Karen, go ahead.
Oh,
Karen, do you want to share? One of the guys, I think Karen already went. So why don't we get, so John, dive into the odor.
all right.
Wait. Can I make one comment? I think when I think of sound and we think of the concept of cymatics, when you get sound, it actually bursts and creates the bubbles that come to life. But it's not just sound that you see, it's light that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an attribute, that the combining of these molecules coming together, actually this creates a sound, which come together and bring things to light. So anyway, just want to put
So
that
let's pull up slide 14 and 15. So we mentioned this last week. So when you think about sound, if you'll see slide 14 and 15 right quick, we'll pull those up for you. This is what you're talking about, Karen, right here, right? So
and if you were to look at that as a cross section, you would actually see a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So things in the patterns come out in what they call platonic solids. So all sound is created in a particular shape and form that together nested make certain geometry. So everything is light.
And even last week, I mentioned to you the next slide that I encourage everyone to go to your voice memo app on your phone and actually record yourself, and you will see your sound in sound waves. So this isn't something that most people notice, which is why I wanted us to slow down. All right, John, you're going to dive into odor for us since we're talking about that lovely
one more thing on sound, just so I can we can finish on that. Sound is also light. It also moves at the speed of light. So you shoot a gun and you're 300 yards away. Before you hear that explosion, the horse in Egypt will hear that, will pick it up on its radar before you will receive to you on 300 yards away of hearing that explosion from the gun. That's the radar principle. And I think that's exactly what Karen was talking about in a much more technological form.
Well, that's even like for any of us that have ever heard a sonic boom. It's always a little scary because you hear the sound long before you recognize what caused the sound. So we know that sound
for me is seeing lightning in the distance and not hearing the sound for 4 or 5 minutes.
Yes. Okay, John.
That tells you the sound is light.
Let's dive into odor.
Odor plays a distinctive part in relation to the survival of man or animal. The fox would starve if it depended upon its eyes alone for food. The rabbit leaves its own distinctive odor behind it, which the fox follows. The odor of a sheep or cow is just as clear to the fox, but it knows that they are not its prey. Each odor conveys a different meaning. For every created thing has its own distinctive odor, which spells out its identity, as clearly as though it could talk and say, I am a rabbit, or I am a lemon, or I am an apple. How often have you gone into a room and smelled something like Ken would do, like burning in the kitchen or gas escaping, which you otherwise would not detect? Odors are therefore as much a part of your education as your geography. Lessons in school are a part of it. Also, they are necessary for your survival, as they are for the survival of the animals of the forest. I'll tell you what, we talk about odor, and we've all seen the movies, and you've heard about how bloodhounds can follow your scent for miles and miles and miles. And so that's just maybe, I mean, it could be like an extreme, not necessarily an extreme example, but it's just how focused, that part of these 9 that it can be.
All right, so before we continue, I just want to encourage everybody to write these few things in the chat box. So the first is identity. So let's be really clear, the identity that we all have. The second is motion. So pausing long enough here. First is identity, second is motion. Third is sound. And fourth is odor. So when we think about this, and if we were to actually write these words down on a Post-it note and put it beside wherever we look every single day, we'd really begin to see these nine areas in fruition, and we'd begin to realize that that's another part of what you're saying is if we can read and count to 9, we can master the secrets of the universe. All right, so here we are.
Can I say one more thing, love? In terms of everything you're hearing right now, everybody should understand this is the way you can communicate with God in nature. Is you can smell a pine tree, you can smell a rose, just like Margaret was talking about. You can go see the seed of the acorn and see it's got inner gases, and now you're communing with God in the idea world. And boy, when you enter into that world, you'd be amazed at what might come to you through desire to manifest idea or manifest something you want to manifest.
Well, when you think about taking these 9 things before we continue this conversation, and you actually went on a walk, went on a hike, walked to your mailbox, and if you took these 9 things and really started to get to know the universe from these 9 lenses, we would begin to know everything in a very different way, would we not?
You mean if you took them away?
No, I'm saying if I were to go, instead of just seeing a pine cone, if I were to actually think about all of these 9 elements in a pine cone, would I know a pine cone in a greater fashion? And so I'm just slowing us down here and just saying that we're being gifted here with key areas of how the universe is created. And yet we as human beings blow past these things all the time without a second thought. All right, who wants to dive into color? That's one of my favorites.
I'll read it, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Color. Every element or particle in the universe has its own distinctive place in the color spectrum to tell all things of its identity and purpose in creation. Likewise, complex bodies have their own complex colors. When you walk through your gardens or forests, the very colors are telling you that they are violets or roses or pansies or oaks or pines or spruce trees. The golden fire of the sunset talks to you in its own way, and the lemon, orange, or apple in theirs. How natural it is for all things to talk that way and have you talk to them in the same language. Why can you not realize, therefore, that you are talking to God through them as directly as you talk to a friend through a telephone receiver? For God created you and all things else.
I think that's beautiful. Anybody else with me on that? I mean, that is just a beautiful expression of color.
That's very powerful. Very powerful.
It really is. And the reason I bring this up is because we in society are so fast, and you all have picked on me this many, many times, going through life too fast, moving too fast, that we really don't even recognize the color of things, much less honor the colors of things, or even invite colors of things to become known to us at a deeper level.
What I like is it's simplifying for us how we commune with nature or how God communicates with us.
That's what I was thinking, Margaret.
Yeah.
That it's always communicating, it's always doing something, and it's through light. And the light, the color, the spectrum.
And also, people take for granted all these things. And it is nice to be able to stop and say, wow, that's amazing.
That was one of the greatest gifts that the Russell work gave to me, was understanding that walking through nature was a magical adventure, an act of love, an ecstatic expression of how much the universe and God loved me and loved us all. And to me, can you imagine if we truly understood that nature was the level of what it is we're talking about here? Can you imagine how much love we would all feel and how that would shift the collective consciousness?
Mhm.
And then
Amazing.
think about it. You can have an apple and an orange, or you can have a banana, and all the variety that it's gifted you with all of its creation and all it's just amazing when you think of the plethora, the richness. Yeah.
All right, so here we go to form, Jim. Form is yours, Jim.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jim. We didn't mean to interrupt you in your nap.
We're almost to the end here.
Every material body has a distinctive form of its own, species, which tells other forms of its identity. Each one distinctly tells all other things in the universe what it is and what it can do. The form of a lemon tells you its identity as clearly as its odor tells you. One speaks through your sense of taste and the other through your sense of vision. Look about you wherever you may go, and you will see that every object is telling you what it is and what it can do, even though one had no word for it. A hammer, for example, tells you that it can do even if it had no name.
Okay, so interesting. So we're down to the last two here. So the form of everything speaks, and now we're down to temperature and rhythm. So Ken, if you would share temperature, and I will close out. I will then do rhythm.
You have time after that.
All right. I think you're hot. Is that temperature? Oh, sorry.
And she's
That's
got
just
rhythm.
an observation.
Well,
That's just
I'm
an
just
observation,
saying,
Ken.
Dan. I'm just saying. All right. All idea bodies have varying melting and freezing points, which tell you their identities in relation to other bodies. Temperature tells you when water will freeze or boil. It tells you when you must put on a coat or take it off. It tells you not to touch this or you may touch that. In animal or human life, these temperature normalcies allow but little extensions either way. Nature has designed man to withstand a temperature normalcy of about 98 degrees. Even 2 degrees above that warns him of death by fever. 3 more degrees are fatal unless alleviated speedily. Likewise, a human cannot live in a pressure of 5 degrees above or below sea level pressures. Each living thing has its own temperature normalcy, just as it has its own heartbeat and blood pressure normalcy. These normalcies have deep meanings and form the basis of information to you, to your doctor, and to the various scientists who specialize in animal life, from the insect to the elephant.
All right, so temperature. I could not have seen that coming, and I asked you to do temperature. That made me laugh out loud. So here we are. And then the reason I purposely, as a facilitator this evening, I purposely had to slow down to read this because these 9 were so big. And when you first look at the words, it's very easy to blow past them all. And to me, the Russell work is a bit like a blooming flower, much like the Christmas amaryllis that we had given you, John, that as it blooms, it becomes more and more beautiful. And that's what I found so important about this. And when I looked at the rest of Unit 8, I felt it was really important for all of us that are on, all of you from YouTube and from Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, anybody who's joining us now or in the future. That's why we're slowing you down. Because if we as human beings understood this already, we would not be having these conversations because we would already get it. So let me share with you rhythm, and then I'm going to ask John to close us out with time. So yes, John.
I want to give you a quote from the Divine Iliad that I think is appropriate to what Ken just said. And from the Iliad, God said, "It is better that a man know not his numbers and letters than to forsake the beauty of a dawn."
All right.
That was a good one, John.
There you go. There you go.
There.
That was
All
God.
right.
That wasn't me. I just want to clarify that.
Bingo. Bingo.
God.
We got a bingo there.
So let's take a look at rhythm. So I thought rhythm was something that was really incredibly powerful. It said all effects of nature are rhythmic. So for those of you that have a copy, notice that nature is capitalized. For all are wave effects, and the wave constitutes the rhythmic heartbeat of the universe. Okay, so John will show that picture of the wave again. The wave constitutes the rhythmic heartbeat of the universe. A deep variation of the rhythm of your own heartbeat would mean death to you. For the heart will allow but very little variation without telling you so and warning you by shock or otherwise. Rhythm is the basis of balance in the arts. In music, the slightest variation is noticeable, while greater variations result in harmony. Rhythmic balance interchangings are evident in all of nature's effects. And so it goes on to talk about the steady walk of a man to the alternating piston strokes of an engine. So I'm not going to read the rest of these, but just may we look for the rhythm in the universe. And so, John, if you would bring us down to the close here, taking a look at time.
Isn't that wonderful? The number 9 is integrated in there, and 9 represents finality. And I can see where time would fit into that. So anyway, number 9 is time. The general concept of time is that it is eternally existent in itself. That is not so. If motion never began, time would never have begun. Time is the interval between sequences of events such as the pulsations of life. The eternal zero is timeless, therefore nothing in it to count, nothing to measure by. Time is the recorder of wave frequencies and their countless variation which take place in the octaves of matter. It conveys countless meanings to the physicist, the musician, the manufacturer, and all who constitute our very civilization. It is one of the teachers of God's ways and processes to man, without which, in their totality, man could not possibly survive, nor could any living creature on earth survive.
All right. So while I'm asking the panel to comment on this, I want to ask James to bring up slide 9 again, because I want to encourage everyone to take a screenshot of this. This comes from the video you're about to see that Karen is gifting us here. God's language of light consists of but 9 words, and that's what we just talked about there. Anybody want to comment on that before we go to the conclusion?
Yeah, time is an interesting thing, and it's so well laid out there, but realize that if there was no motion, there would be nothing to measure. And that's why we're talking about the vacuum of space, the zero vacuum of space. So think about time started in agriculture when we were human beings and we were growing crops. We needed to know the summer solstice and the winter solstice. That is where time came from. It came from the measurement of fields. And then it elevated into something that we could measure units by and so forth and help us with other things. So you can see the development of the watch of the time and also the simplicity of it. We think it's simple, but if you handed a caveman a watch, he would look at that thing and have no clue what it is. But to us, it's simple. And that's, again, tells you how much we evolve and how evolution is a part of creation. And we are a big part of evolution. The history in which we're in right now, mankind has advanced more in the last 70 years than it has since the dawn of consciousness up to 1950. So think about that for a second. 74 years, 75 now. Dang, I just missed a year. There we go. I'm in the new year. 75 years.
All right.
And just one little insight here is Leo rarely used the word evolve or evolution. She always said unfolding. In other words, the idea is there. The unfolding of the idea happens and it refolds. So it's not really evolving, it's unfolding because it's already there. It's unfolding.
The idea never leaves idea, though, Margaret. Everything is a representation of idea. Right? Everything is a mirror image of an idea.
Yeah, unfolding is really a part of the creation or the manifestation.
Well, it'd be like the Christmas amaryllis, wouldn't it? So when John got it, they were just buds. So the idea of the flower was there, and then it took time for it to unfold, and then it will end up beginning to refold. So
But the
similarly
flower
in the
is a representation of the idea. The idea never leaves creator, right? All idea is in creator's mind, so it never
but
leaves.
you see
It's only borrowed.
the flower is
create a
not
simulation
evolving
of
now.
I think that's where I started in the beginning when you asked what was the key thing. And for me, this is what really got me this time. Time is that it is eternally exists in itself. So it's always going through cycles and refolding.
Okay.
May
so
I
we are-
add something to that?
Yes.
I want to
Before I
prepare
take
our
us to the
audience.
conclusion.
Yes. I want to prepare our audience for what is to come. So we spent time, no pun intended here, on time. But when the Russells reveal to our students and our audience the avoidance principle of nature and take away time, that's going to be a nice little shock for everybody to kind of, weave or interweave that into their own understanding.
Yeah.
So that's why the saying that, and Dr. Russell, I think, I don't know that he coined this, but he wrote on it, that now is eternity. The moment is all you have, is that moment right there. Because in the avoidance principle of nature, it never happens. Okay. So anyway, not to get deep, but I just wanted to, throw a little seed out there for our audience of what is to come and the great science which separates this teaching from everything else in the world is the science of this course.
To wrap up here before we go to our visual journey here. So in the conclusion of this particular lesson on page 583 towards the bottom, wanted to mention a couple of things. It says these 9 attributes of motion constitute the teaching faculty in God's school, in which God, the creator of them, is the headmaster. I thought that was a lovely way to say it. A lovely way to say it.
Very nice.
And it's incredible that anyone who realizes that could not survive without these moment-to-moment teachers. Think about that for a minute. All of which are perpetually attendant upon every living creature on earth, could ever deny the existence of their and his creator. To deny God is to deny love and beauty, without which one would be alone and desolate, for loneliness is self-inflicted. So pause there for a moment, because I thought this was incredibly powerful, because loneliness is so pervasive in our society today that if we really understood that nature was loving us every moment of every day, can you imagine what a different existence that we would have? Very powerful. It says God is love, light, and ecstasy. And I wanted just to end with this. It says these 9 teachers herein described are his 9 inanimate messengers, created by him to lead you to his very door of love and beauty and ecstasy in the high heavens. Powerful, powerful, powerful. So we have the gift of Karen's creation. So Karen, what are we going to be treated with tonight?
It's just an overview, just to stimulate kind of what we've been talking about. But I'm always surprised that the conversation goes one way and I've done something. So for me, it's a convergence of all of the brilliance of the conversations with the 50-year plus students and Ken, Mr. 30. So for me, it's awesome. It's I love it. Just like, okay, it cements more of what the teaching is.
Okay, let's roll with our visual journey. Enjoy. lovely, lovely video, Karen. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I want to bring up Susan's comment right quick. She says, I'm so fascinated by this chapter, as are we, Susan. This video is excellent and wish I could read faster. Remember, all of our videos are on YouTube. You can go back and watch them as many times as you would like. Between the visuals and the panel sharing and explaining, I'm learning. I deeply appreciate all of your efforts to bring this to light. I'm so excited. So very, very powerful. Speaking of the fact that you can watch these videos over and over, you know that we've had a goal to reach 3,000 watch hours. Well, we have only 250 watch hours left. And so if all of our viewers just watched an hour over the next week or two, we would reach our goal of 3,000 watch hours. And then we can begin to offer things like t-shirts and some journals and things like that to help support the whole program and the initiative. Any final comments from our panel here? What a fun conversation here tonight. Anyone?
I want to just say to Karen that these 9 things weren't the easiest one to do for you, I would imagine. And you did them very well, but I could see they could have been really challenging.
No, actually it isn't. And I'll tell you why. Because of the book, my own book I've done, the Inside Out book, I realized doing it, it's all one. We have taken our disciplines and we have divided them into sections. But when you actually see it as a spectrum of light, you realize it is the one. And the light comes, and when you see the light waves on the spectrum, it's color. And when you see the particles moving, you notice it's chemistry. It's also the crystallization process. It all goes to 7, actually. In a magazine I did, 7, and you see it's one thing, just formulated and the way it's compressed. And so for me, it was like easy. I mean, when you get that, to me, that's when you understand the Russell work. It's all one.
Very good.
So.
All right. So a gracious thank you to everyone here and to our panel. What a fabulous time to have 200 plus years here on the panel tonight. So a gracious thank you to you all. Last week, I said a gracious thank you to everybody all year, but I wanted to go ahead and ask James and Joey to please come out from behind the camera. They are our tech folks that run everything behind the scenes. We could not do it without them. They keep us on track every single week. And so I just wanted to acknowledge these two. They are the ones that help keep the engine going. Joey's in the background as well. They like to stay in the background, but we're going to say a gracious thank you to them all.
Hey, Joey, James, what's going on?
So you see that this is how much love that we pour into this particular broadcast conversation that we have every week. And so Susie said this, she said, it's such a blessing and a miracle how this podcast changes my whole mood, attitude, and I get so excited and inspired. Like I'm growing. So love to hear that. And so we just encourage everyone to please invite your friends, join us on the podcast. As you go through and you're learning more and more, you can check out philosophy.org, see the events they're having, see what's going on. And Karen says you're all looking so good. So we're going to send you lots of vibes. We're going to turn back the clocks on us all. So Karen will take that beautiful comment. And 3D Scott, so good to see you here tonight. Please check out his YouTube channel. He says the video is wonderful, and I will link it in my group as a part of the experience. So happy New Year, everybody. We are off and running on 2025. Until next Sunday.